Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's watch.
We can share it.
What did you do with him?
I didn't do anything with him. That was all you.
Yeah.
All right, I'm not sure what's happening, but by context, they came back from the ensemble party at the bar, and they're in the kitchen, and she is, I think, noticing that alcohol is gone, and she's saying, "What did you do? You drank all of them?" Okay, so if he did, then, he's a grown adult. it's fine. But he's saying he didn't. So is he forgetting? Is he lying? Is he doing what people will do when they have a problem with substances and minimizing or trying to hide, that kind of thing? I will say that there's a chance that, my contact on the show says that they do try to subtly manage people that are getting too drunk by taking the alcohol away. Now, what she told me was in the pods, if they see people getting too drunk, then they just pack up the alcohol early, in the evening. And they don't, I didn't hear from my contact on the show that they go directly to the person and say, you need to stop drinking, right? So they will subtly, quietly remove, right? Or if they're at the getaway and they're at a bar, they will go to the bartender and say, hey, don't serve that person anymore. And so I wonder if in the apartments they would subtly enter and just extract the alcohol, and then they both get home and she's like, where did all the alcohol go? And he's like, I don't know. And she's like, I don't think so, right? Because I don't know if they do that, and even if they did, I don't know if this is a scenario. Another explanation is what I said earlier, that he did drink it and he is minimizing or something. I don't know.
Where did they go?
I don't know what you did with them. Jesus, woman.
Oh, okay.
Must have drank them all.
Was that 12 pack?
Yeah, I think it was a 12-pack.
Anton? I literally had 2.
About to have 3.
Okay, so I think what we're hearing, if it did disappear, I would imagine that he would say, yeah, where is it? And he would be genuine about it. So he's being kind of sly, and I think what he is either avoiding admitting to her or to the cameras that he had 10 beers from the sound of it, in addition to drinking at the bar. So, there's nothing wrong with people drinking alcohol. They can do it. It's a personal choice. If you have kids, obviously there are considerations, right? But if you don't, as long as you're not driving drunk and you're not violent or abusive or something. Now, as a spouse, you can absolutely have a problem with it. You could just have a problem with seeing your partner drunk and you don't like the way it looks. You can have your preference. It doesn't give you the right to demand it, but it can be a deal breaker, or it could be a concern. It's fine. But people can drink. The way that she's approaching this is, it's like she is accusing him of a crime or something, and it's not a crime. He can drink. Now, she could be concerned. I would be concerned, but I wouldn't go after him, because if he has a problem, what do you expect is going to happen from this scenario? I would just catalog it like, whoa, he drank 10 beers and he drank at the bar and had shots. That's a lot of alcohol. It's high tolerance. He doesn't seem very drunk right now, if at all. So that's high tolerance. This is typical life for him. Do I want to deal with that? Because there's no amount of chastising that can cause people who have a problem with substances to get them to stop or curb it. It's bigger. It's way bigger than that typically, right? Now, you can certainly communicate. You can have a sit down. It's like, hey, when they're sober, and it's like, hey, I have a concern, or go to therapy, Al-Anon, AA, this kind of stuff. Now, if she's genuinely just in the moment, just like, what? And she's just astonished, that's fine. But yeah, so he has a sly smile. So I think he's basically saying, yeah, I drank all that.
Patrick was over?
Yeah, we had like maybe 4.
He came here?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you tell me he came here?
Well, he picked me up, but we had a couple. What's wrong with that?
Okay, so he's saying, well, Patrick came over and he had some. I'm going to take a guess and say it wasn't half, but even if it was, right? Now, she could be concerned. I would be concerned of, okay, well, what does this mean? So maybe we should just walk ourselves through this. I specialized for a time in part on addiction and worked at an agency that's all that they did was training people of various addictions. In fact, most of our clients were not. So the word addiction, we tend not to use. We use the term of use disorder or problem use, this kind of thing, because the word addiction has become so convoluted by society. But I still use it. Anyway, so what I'll say is that, I was going to finish my sentence that we treated mainly opioid users. So, I have a fair amount of experience with it. And I was addicted to cigarettes. I'll use the word addiction because I was for many years. And I haven't smoked in 25 years. And to this day, I might contend that quitting smoking was the most difficult thing I had ever done. And I had really put my mind to it for years trying to quit and kept failing and kept failing. It was really hard. And at a certain point, I just thought, I'm never going to quit. It's just impossible. And I should just surrender. But I just kept at it. And I just kept at it. At a certain point, I thought, why am I keeping at it? Well, I just got to keep trying. And there were so many things that I tried. And, I was a therapist at the time. I mean, part of it was because I was a therapist. And, when you're working as a novice therapist at an agency, you got wall-to-wall clients. Well, I was typically smoking a cigarette like 2 or 3 an hour, so do the calculation on that. And sessions are 50, 55 minutes, and I only get 5 minutes to do paperwork or something, go to the bathroom. And I'd have to run outside and like suck down a cigarette. I hated that. Almost every cigarette that I smoked toward the end in the last 5 years that I smoked, I hated every single cigarette. Like every once in a while, I'd be out with friends or having coffee with a friend, and we would both be having a cigarette, and I would actually enjoy that cigarette. But like 99% of the time, it was just like, I hate smoking. I hate having the inconvenience, the smell, it's just, I hate it, and yet I had a really hard time quitting. It was very, very hard. Basically for me, which is a principle of recovery in the early phases, is that I had to limit my behavior to such a degree that it wouldn't allow smoking to be tempted. And even then it was really hard. And I satisfied my oral fixation by eating an entire bag of Doritos every night. I would sit down on the floor because I didn't have a couch, and I would watch my 13-inch color cathode ray tube television with bunny ears, and I would watch Deep Space Nine, and I would eat an entire bag of Doritos. Like, okay, don't smoke. Just eat Doritos. And I haven't smoked 25 years, but I still have dreams that I'm smoking. And as soon as I have a dream that I'm smoking, in the dream I'll be like, you're smoking. You quit. What are you doing smoking? It happens every time. It's like, God damn it. I relapsed. That's all, so 25 years later, I'm still having, semi-trauma dreams about that moment where you're just like, fuck, like it's back to square one. I'm such a loser. This is so annoying. I'm putting myself through all this crap. And, it was emotionally addictive and habitual. Obviously, there's a physical component too, but I tried the nicotine gum, and I tried psychotropics, but the typical psychotropic you give for addiction, recovery, abstinence has a side effect of panic attacks and anxiety, and I suffer from that. And so it gave me the worst panic attack I've ever had. It woke me up in the middle of the night. Like 2 weeks into taking this drug, I was camping in the middle of the wilderness. There was no light. Like you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. There was no moon. And I shot up out of in the darkness at 3 a.m. in a full panic attack. And if you've never had a panic attack, God bless you. It is particular. I've had anxiety. I've had nervousness. I've been freaking out. If you go to the doctor, you're like, oh my God, like that's anxiety. Panic attack is a whole other fucking thing. Anyway, so thank God that I quit though. Anyway, so, going through it yourself, you learn a lot. Anyway, so what should she be concerned about? What would she be concerned about? Well, I guess I'll just speak for myself, that I would be concerned that typically problem use gets worse over time. It's progressive, as we say, and that when they are using, they are avoiding, they're intoxicated, they might be prone to having difficulty processing emotions sober. So even if they did get clean, they might have to kind of start over with their emotional development because they've never had alcohol not there to help them, It also could indicate trauma because usually addiction, especially to the kinds of numbing substances like alcohol and heroin, these are drugs that take away pain and numb you. And so it could indicate significant trauma, PTSD, complex PTSD, other kinds of things. Now, we don't fault someone for having been traumatized, but it is a concern that people should have, if there's a journey that they have to go on, but they might not go on that journey, and their trauma might affect them in a lot of ways that can't really be detected yet because they are numbing themselves, you know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying anything about Anton. I have no idea. He might only drink occasionally. We just don't know. But if I were in her shoes, I'd be concerned, but those aren't deal breakers to me. But they would be things like, okay, if I look into the future, there's a lot of possibilities. And at best, there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be problems. There's going to be discoveries or, something, right? At worst, he will become worse and worse with his alcohol use. His health will decline. He won't be a functional partner because he'll be hammered most of the time. He'll start hiding his use. He might not do well at his work. He might, when intoxicated, especially if we're having tension, he might be impulsive. He might reach out to pass, when it comes to the sort of behaviors that are things that you regret the next day or things that are problematic, alcohol almost always plays a role, or at least statistics will show that, depending on what we're talking about, that alcohol plays a huge role. So like car accidents, alcohol plays a huge role. Suicide, alcohol plays a huge role. Now you say, well, if you're suicidal, you're probably going to do it anyway, and alcohol can help give people the courage to move forward. Yeah, some of the time. But what we find is that when we take away the alcohol from people, then they have a much lower rate of completing suicide, and later on they will say, I'm glad that I got through that period because that was a dark period, and I'm glad I'm alive, So anyway, so there's that. Infidelity, alcohol almost always plays a role. Now, what people say again is, well, if someone wants to cheat, they're just going to cheat, and the alcohol is just giving them that vehicle to do so. No. People might have inside of them somewhere some curiosity about this person at work or something. You add alcohol to it, and all of the checks and balances, like the very memory of their partner, could just be completely obliterated by the alcohol, and therefore they don't even really know that they're cheating in the moment. Whereas if they were sober, they would never entertain those thoughts. They have a little crush on someone at work, but they would never entertain those feelings. But when they're drinking, they do, and it builds, blah, blah, blah. So obviously violence, intimate partner violence, conflict, yelling at each other, not making sense, being in a bad mood. There's a lot of things that chronic alcohol use, problem use will, a lot of things, a lot of concerns. We don't know if Anton has those things, but Allie might not know those things. She hasn't seen it yet. Those are things to worry about. Now, are they slam dunk? No. There's a chance that Anton has it under control, and he's like, well, it's Friday night, and it's relatively not a problem, but he still has a lot of tolerance, or I don't know. It's hard to say. So there's those concerns. I could go on and on, but I'm yammering. So should she be concerned? Yeah, but he's not in trouble. And one of the problems of being a partner with someone with a substance use problem is if you have an approach of chastising and over-functioning and yelling at them or saying, oh, you're doing it again, it creates this dynamic that everyone suffers from and doesn't do anything to help the other person recover. Having said that, you can, as someone that is affected by the person's substance use, tell them, your use is affecting me. And here's how it's affecting me. And I don't like that. And I wish it weren't true. You can do that. In fact, it sometimes helps to do that. It tells people, what's going on so that they are given a chance to not be in denial. But it's also just functional relationship behavior. Also, it's raising the bottom, as we call it, in terms of if people are in denial and you don't tell the problem, you don't tell them that their use is a problem, then they believe they're far from rock bottom. And there's a lot of debate about rock bottom and stuff. I won't get into it. But if you tell them, look, this is affecting me on a daily basis. And if this continues, I don't know if this is going to work between the two of us. I want it to work, but I'm telling you, there's sort of a limit. And so what that can do to the person that's using is it raises the bottom and makes them maybe even to right now. And they're like, oh, okay. Because people with alcohol problems all want to stop. There's a part of them that absolutely knows it's a problem because, alcohol causes all sorts of problems. I mean, hangovers alone, right? And they know that they usually come from families where it was a problem. So they know it's a problem, but they don't want to admit it, or they're kicking it down the road, or they're convincing themselves it's fine, but there's a part of them that knows it's a problem. Now, sometimes that can be a problem because then they're ashamed of themselves and that causes them to drink more and distance themselves from you. But anyway, so let's see how they handle it here.
That's news. He came
Right.
in here?
I think he was downstairs and I ended up coming down with him, and this was what, 3 days ago? 4 days ago?
Yeah, I know when you met up with him, but I didn't.
It almost seems like they don't live in the apartment together. Like he lives in the apartment, she doesn't. We know that happens sometimes. Like if their job is in another city, town, because if they pull from all of Colorado or the greater Denver area, then it is inconvenient to both stay in the apartment building that most of the cast members are staying in. So he's saying, yeah, there are 10 beers that are not in the fridge from the past 3 days. I thought it was like she woke up in the morning and there were 10 beers in the fridge and now it's late at night. And she's like, what's that? So she's been gone for 3 days or longer. And she's like, where did those 10 beers go?
I don't know. I think we just we drank them. I know you.
Oh, I
drank
didn't.
a couple. I drank a couple and that's it. What?
You also had a 12-pack of Coors in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting to see a conversation like this. And it happens a lot. And I don't fault either one of them for not knowing how to talk about this. Either one of them could head this off at the pass. She could stop the way she's talking about it as if he's in trouble or he's wrong or something, because he's not. He's not in trouble and he didn't do anything wrong. She can have a preference and she can have concerns, but she's not the alcohol police. And I actually am commending him for not really taking the bait, because other people in his shoes would be like, why am I in trouble? And starting something and then it's, off to the races. He's just like, yeah, I don't know. But he could help by saying, yeah, okay, well, if what you're saying is you think I drink a lot or something, yeah, I guess compared to what you drink or compared to what you think I should, yeah, I like to have some beers now and then or whatever. The way that he's communicating, he's just like, huh,
Do you realize how that's concerning?
Not really, no.
Yeah. She can have her concerns, but there's a way to communicate. It's like, honey, I just want to tell you off camera, I have some concerns. Can you tell me, just be honest with me about the drinking thing? And I'm not used to it. And these are red flags for me. But she's framing it like you're in trouble. You did something wrong. One, it's not philosophically sensible. Plus, if they do stay together, which I don't think they will, it sets up a really toxic dynamic of codependency and dependency.
Me having a couple beers here and there doesn't represent who I am or anything about me.
What's a normal week for you?
A normal week for me is maybe having 1 to 2 nights. I'll turn on like a movie or something, watch it for a couple hours, have a drink or two, and that's about it, and go to bed.
That's a concern for me.
Okay, I'm going to take a guess to say that he's downplaying it. But either way, she's saying that's a concern for her. So, okay. So you have your preferences. That's fine. And good to get it out there. And okay. So I guess he has a choice to make of saying, oh, well, I don't want to lose you, so I won't drink because I don't care about drinking, or at least not that much. Or they both don't really like each other to begin with, and this is their opportunity to pull the plug.
What part of that is a concern for you?
What part of that isn't a concern?
If you think it's a problem, I have no issue at all showing you it's not a problem. I won't drink for a week or two. If I was a drug addict or if I was an alcoholic or whatever the case is, then it's like there's a pattern to it.
Okay, well, he's saying, I'm willing to give up alcohol for a week or two. And he's also saying, if it was a problem, there would be a pattern. Yeah. And she isn't really saying anything like, you got super drunk that one night and you don't even remember what happened and you almost like fell out of the balcony or whatever. She's not saying anything like that. It's just like the intellectual idea of him drinking is a problem for her, which is fine. I'll repeat that it's fine if you don't like to see your spouse intoxicated, whether it's alcohol or super high on edibles or whatever. It is disgusting to you. It's a turnoff. It's distancing. It's bothersome. I talk with lots of couples where one of the individuals will smoke weed every night after the kids go to bed, or maybe a little bit before the kids go to bed. And it's distancing, you know? At the very least, you know the other person is in another state while you're not. So if you're both in that state, then typically people are like, yeah, we're both here, you know? But if you're not, it can be distancing. It also can be completely eliminating of the possibility of communicating and being intimate, you know, bonding and having communication and seeing eye to eye and spending time together. If someone is on cloud 9 and you're just like on the ground and you go to the store, you're watching TV or you're trying to have a conversation, like it can literally be your partner slurring their words or they're just not even really there, then yeah, that's distancing. And I've talked to a lot of couples about that. And almost all the time, the person who's using every day doesn't want to use every day, really. I mean, there's a part of them that does, but when they are admitting their more rational, deep down thoughts, yeah, they like to have an edible now and then or whatever, but they would rather not have to do it every day, but they feel like they have to because of the stress. They don't know how to deal with it. They have trauma, whatever. And so, you know, as a therapist, we'll talk about that. But it's easier said than done. I've worked with clients for years and gotten, you know, somewhat down the road in terms of recovery on this. It's hard. You know, there's habit, there's trauma, there's not only just habit of just like, this is what I do, but habit of how I deal with life, what life feels like, how I deal with sleep, how I deal with the evening, how I deal with friends, how I deal with socializing, how I deal with sex, how I deal with my job. You know, there's just a lot of, people can become quite dependent on it. And the alternative is scary, is distressing, is, you know, triggering. You know, there's a lot of things that can have the shame of it all. And this is the only way to numb that shame. And then I feel ashamed. You know, it's a whole cycle. It's why perfectly rational people will go down the road of addiction, even though they know what's happening, you know, because most people who have problems with substances grew up in a family where it happened. And when they were 10, they did not like the fact that their dad drank all the time, or that their mom drank, a bottle or 2 bottles of wine every night at dinner and fell asleep on the couch and wasn't really there emotionally for him. You know what I mean? So they know firsthand. So it's fine. But she hasn't said anything along those lines. It's just an intellectual thing. Now, as I said before, would I have a concern given what I think his drinking is like? Yeah, I would wonder. But I would not necessarily assume. And I would also want to have a conversation of just like, what sort of checks and balances do you have? Because, I heard from your friend's girlfriend that you and Joe used to drink a lot before. And just tell me about it. I would want to know. But if she's just now, I'm guessing that she, one, isn't into him, and this is a good excuse. And she has genuine concerns. She's not used to it, or she has a history, or she just has rational concerns. Also, 3, I think she has not felt love from him. I think he has checked out. He doesn't present anything in front of the cameras. Even in this conversation, he's really good about acting like nothing is happening. And I think either unconsciously or consciously, she wants out. And this is a good thing to highlight.
Why are you being like this right now?
I'm not giving you shit for anything that, like, is your normal work week, like, you not cleaning up after yourself, you not doing your laundry? And
Yes. 100%. That's my norm.
Okay. That's fine.
So I think I lost the thread. I think he was doing a tit for tat of just like, okay, well, if you have your problems with me, I mean, are you normally this messy? I think was what he's saying. And she's like, yeah, I am that. I think, I'm not sure.
Like, you're just being defensive instead of just being honest with me. Like, if it's an issue, it's an issue.
What's an issue?
Now, the honesty, I think, is a concern. So either just around his alcohol use, he minimizes, because throughout this whole conversation, it seems pretty clear that he's deflecting and minimizing. He could have easily just said, oh yeah, there were 10 beers. Okay, well, let me think. There were a couple beers where I went down to Patrick's place, and then I had, I probably had like 5 beers watching a movie the other night, because I don't know, sometimes I like to do that. But he's not doing that. Like, that math isn't adding up, and I think she knows it, and this isn't the first time that's happened. And so, yeah, if it's lying, then absolutely. So she's highlighting that, and I think there's a good chance that that's happening. Does that mean he's a liar? We don't know. Could be, but it also could just be that he just will lie or minimize or lie by omission when it comes to his use because he's ashamed and he doesn't want the stigma, or doesn't want people controlling, or doesn't want to reveal, or doesn't want to admit it himself.
Me having more drinks than you think is acceptable in the course of 10 days?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's like, tell me what you want me to do.
No. You're a grown person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to tell you what to do.
So it's edited, but it was a good question that he asked. She's fine to answer it in that way, but he was being functional by saying, okay, well, what do you want? He could have asked it differently. Like, okay, I don't want to lose you, and I like drinking, but I don't want to lose you. So what is it that you want me? Do you want me like not to drink at all? Or do you want me to minimize or to lower it or something? Or do you want me to just not have any problems if I do happen to drink? Like, I want to work on this. I want you to be happy with me or something like that. Okay. He didn't do it that way, but he did ask the question, and there's a possibility that he was open. Like he said earlier, it's like, if you want me to stop drinking for a week or two, then she's like, no, you have to just know. And, maybe she could say, well, if you don't understand what I'm basically asking for, then we're lost or something, or don't put that on me, or I don't know. But I suspect what happened was that she doesn't want to be on the record telling him, even if the cameras weren't there, because people do this, they don't want to, it's vulnerable to ask for something is the thing. It's also putting a concrete stamp on, if I mix metaphors, on exactly what you're saying. It's easier to just throw out sort of vague insults than to say, here's what I want, you know? Also, it could set you up for failure or something. I don't know. Plus, she might not really endorse what she wants, for him to just stop drinking altogether and be the man that she wants him to be or something. And she knows that it's not okay to tell someone that, or I don't know. But she's like, no, you should just know. And okay, but I would hope that, because I've had these conversations on my couch with clients, and I guess with her, I would say, what are you feeling right now? Because that's the language of my office anyway. Because if we don't know what's happening underneath it, then we can't know why we're feeling or why we're having the impulses, why we're even in a fight. So we have to start there. And I'm guessing she would feel afraid that he is, one, obscuring, and two, that he has a bigger problem of alcohol than she knows or that he's willing to admit. And then that means a whole slew of things that could happen. It could be helpful to go down that road, because if she actually walked through the way I did earlier in terms of what consequences can happen if someone does have a problem or they do develop a problem. And there's a number of signs of a number of cast members that it could be the case. We can't know. But maybe if she walked herself through those scenarios that she's worried about, she would say, oh, yeah, okay, well, those are concerns, but I guess I don't see any evidence of it now. So whatever kind of problem, it's not to that point. So maybe my worries are worrying about some unknown future that could happen. You know what I mean? Now, I want to say that there's a lot of signs from even the little bits that we've seen that he drinks a lot more than he's letting on. And there are almost always problems associated with that. And it almost always gets worse before someone hits bottom and, maybe goes into recovery.
Is the tequila still in the fridge?
What's that?
Is the tequila still in the fridge?
Check.
So I'm going to take a guess and say it's not, which would be in line with my assumption as to how much he drinks, given the little bits that I've seen. And he's, there's so many other ways he could respond. He could be like, earlier he would have to say this right up front. I'm just like, oh yeah, I've been drinking every night, with Patrick or by myself, watch movies. I don't need to do that. I think if there's a lot of the tequila gone, or if it's completely gone, then she has more reason to be concerned, not only about the amount of alcohol that he drinks, but also that he's obscuring and lying about it.
No, that one's not.
Yeah.
Now, credit to him in the edit. He's not getting angry. He's not lying. He's like, no, it's not here. And maybe in this moment, she's like, okay, there's no use in getting in an argument about this. I just have to reckon with what I'm learning, or what is really kind of settling in, what's really sinking in for me, which I think she should do. I think she should really just... Now, we don't know, how they could negotiate this. I've had these conversations on my couch. It's not easy. It's, I wouldn't... If he said, oh, I'll give up alcohol, I would not imagine that would work out lickety-split. But there's a way forward. I've worked with couples that have gone down way longer roads, years and years, and the alcohol problem has caused massive problems in the relationship. It's not necessarily doomed. There is a way forward. So she's not doomed. There is a way to talk about it. But I would totally understand if she's just like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't know how to deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. The whole thing stinks and I don't want to deal with it.
Anton, there was like half a bottle left in there.
I don't know how much is in there. It was...
Right.
Yeah. So he could easily say, yeah, I must have drank it. Because his general approach is that, to just say, yeah, I drank alcohol. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So he could just have that, right? But he's not, right?
I'm concerned.
You drink. I drink. It's fine.
Yeah. I don't know, but there are signs, right? And this is what you will hear. And there's a good possibility that he is practiced, not in a Machiavellian way, but he has experience in the pitfalls of having a conversation like this. And he knows it doesn't help anyone, doesn't help him if he gets defensive or starts to obviously lie about things. So he's kind of being a politician in a way, you know. It might say something, I don't know. But that is a classic thing that you will hear from people that are being confronted about their use. So you drink, you know, but it's just like, we both know that our drinking is very different, you know what I mean? So, yeah. It's not a crime for him to drink. He can drink. He's of age. As long as he's not breaking any laws, he's not hurting anyone, he can drink. It's nothing, he's not immoral, okay? But if he's minimizing, if he has a problem, if he's hiding it as a partner, it should be something that you would have to reckon with. Is this something I want to deal with? Is this something that I'm willing to go down the, because when someone is in an addiction and when they go through recovery, the partner is along for the ride. And the partner doesn't usually benefit from any of that. They benefit from the person recovering eventually, but the descent into rock bottom, the bouncing off the bottom, the recovery process, it requires a lot of support. When they go through recovery, abstinence, you know, there's a lot of emotions that come up that makes it hard for those people to show up in the marriage emotionally or even just practically. So yeah, now I'm not saying anything about Anton. I have no idea, but should she be concerned? Should there be major considerations of just like, am I in love with him enough? Am I willing to do that? Do I even love him anymore knowing that this is the case? Yeah, she should absolutely be thinking about that.
I do drink.
Yeah, I think you've had quite a few more drinks than me tonight, because, you know, but that's fine.
Okay, what he's saying is that, you know, look at you, maybe because she's bringing this up, that she's drank more tonight. Okay, so interesting. She doesn't seem intoxicated. I mean, I assumed that everyone would be, right, to some extent, but she's not like Annie, you know.
Just processing.
Yeah, good. Having a chastising conversation or trying to see eye to eye, and maybe that was good. Maybe it was good that she would, you know, much earlier, she's just like, I'm concerned. Don't you understand why I'm concerned? It was something like that. And I'm like, I don't think he's going to agree with that. He might have, but I don't think he would. And maybe that was a valiant effort of just like, is there a chance that he might understand that there's a concern? And since he isn't responding in that way, then now she's left to process. So, yeah.
I feel like you are the right person, but if you feel like I'm not the right guy for you, then I'll respect that decision. But what I'm looking for is a marriage, right?
Okay, so he's saying, I love you and I want to be with you. He's not saying it in a super warm and convincing way, but it's possible that that's what's happening. By the way, I did ask my contact on the show if she could flesh out Anton at all, because there's just not a lot there. And what she told me, I'll just summarize, that Anton behind the scenes was similar to the way he's on camera. And, you know, it wasn't like behind the scenes he was really talkative or really emotional or really lovey-dovey with Allie. So what we see is what is happening away from the camera as well. Now, my contact wouldn't know what is happening away from the production crew, but there's that. And also, my contact said that what we see on camera was also her vibe, what she noticed of Anton, and that he's not putting a lot of effort into trying to build a relationship. I would say neither one of them are. Now, sometimes that doesn't mean anything. Like, there was a couple last season that got married. I think it was last season, where I thought they're not really putting a lot of effort into this, but then they ended up getting married. So, could be off camera. It could just be how they want things to be. It's fine. The other thing my contact said was that he said, either on camera or off camera to production, that when he saw her, he was overwhelmed by how beautiful she was and how attractive she was, and worried that he wasn't attractive enough, that she would obviously not want to be with him. And it was causing him to be in his head too much, and was a potential wrench in the gears of him being natural and with her. So we could add that, and we could imagine that being true. Insecurity. Sometimes people that look like him, that seem cold or distant or not there or rejecting or something along those lines, withholding, it can be because they're insecure and terrified, and their way is just kind of just freeze. Kind of has that look to it, honestly. Now, by this point, I think it's a different situation, because they've had a bit of a rough time up until this point. I mean, not like rough, but like not great. But maybe when they were at the getaway, because it seemed kind of distant there too. So, and especially once they came back to Denver. So maybe that was one of the factors of just like, because you could even imagine, let's imagine that he's all in, he's all invested, and he's feeling pretty good. But you can imagine the way that Allie talks, really both of them, but if you're not really aware of how you're coming across, you could imagine interpreting Allie as not necessarily being that into you, even if she was. So maybe that's what both of them were cursed by, that they both don't wear their, because if we think about all the cast members, if we have on one end of the spectrum people who have their heart on their sleeve, and on the other end of the spectrum people who don't, on this end you have Edmund and maybe Madison, this kind of thing. And then on the other end, maybe you have Anton and Allie and Nick. And the assumption about people on this side is that they're fake, that they don't love people. But in the real world, we know situations that this happens, and it's unfortunate that shy people or people that will freeze under pressure, when they're young, they'll be labeled as stuck up, or in the workplace, they will be labeled as higher than thou, like superior, like they're above it all. They think they're better than us. But when you actually look at it, the person comes across that way, and maybe they even are unknowingly putting out that vibe because they're so terrified of being noticed for their nervousness that they're trying to overcompensate by seeming like everything's fine. But if you go too far, it makes you look like you're aloof and you don't care and that you think you're superior. But I will know that, as a micro example of this, that a lot of people that I grew up with in grade school and beyond high school that were labeled as stuck up. That was the word. I don't know if people use that word, but that's the word we'd use, meaning that they thought they were superior, narcissistic, better than, that sort of thing. I look back now and I'm quite sure that every one of those individuals was shy or terrified, and was just trying to get through the day. And what a tragedy that is, right? So it's possible that these two people are kind of in that zone. I could see people in the audience thinking either one of these people, particularly Anton, as being like stuck up or withholding or something or fake. But we don't know, Could they be? Yeah. Could they have been for real in the beginning and then immediately was like, this isn't working, but let's go all the way. That happens. But there's also a possibility, if we're using this as a jumping off point, that they are 100% in even now, but given the way that their traumas played out, the way they were raised, they have no neediness or emotion or love or longing or warmth, and it's causing the other person to be like, I don't think this person likes me. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.